guys, welcome to another recap video. I just want to say before I get into my little reviews, I actually sat down and I started reviewing all these films. I got to number 138 when I realized the camera wasn't recording. What a waste of my vocals. So yeah, this is attempt number 2. So, but anyway, I just wanted to share that with you because I am ever so pissed that happened. Anyway, now time for me to give you my brief reviews on some more of the films that I watched during my 31 Days of Halloween Movie Marathon Challenge. Starting with number 133, Pumpkinhead, a 1988 American horror film directed by Stan Winston in his directorial debut, with a screenplay by Mark Patrick Carducci and Gary Girani, from a story by Carducci, Winston, and Richard C. Weinman. In it, after a tragic accident, a man conjures up a towering, vengeful demon called Pumpkinhead to destroy a group of unsuspecting teenagers. This is a fun film for sure, though I do ask myself how one drunk moron was able to subdue 5 people with the power of his words. Point is, I love that this film really takes a supernatural approach to Gandhi's quote, "An eye for an eye makes the whole world blind." It's about wanting vengeance and seeking it out, but not weighing up the costs, and ultimately, sure, you hurt the person who hurt you, but then it hurts others and ultimately will hurt you just as much. So at the end of the day, what was gained? I think Pumpkinhead is a great concept, and I love how those who summon him end up taking his place. It's brilliant, and I love Lance Henriksen in it. Number 134, Pumpkinhead 2, Blood Wings, a 1994 direct-to-video American horror film directed by Jeff Burr and written by Konstantin Cherkonia and Ivan Cherkonia. It's the sequel to 1988's Pumpkinhead and the second film in the Pumpkinhead franchise. In it, thrill-seeking teenagers resurrect a demon from his grave and a blood rampage for revenge begins. This sequel barely ties into the first film. Instead, it is about the bastard child of Pumpkinhead, which doesn't make any sense, and he is accidentally summoned and gets revenge on those who killed him. That part I understand. So we have a small town with a deep dark secret and someone returning for blood. Gotcha. I love that angle. I just think the way it works as a sequel doesn't make sense. But the performances were good, and it was nice seeing Andrew Robinson as a good guy. As its own film, I enjoy it. As a sequel, not so much. Number 135, Pumpkinhead 3, Ashes to Ashes, a 2006 made-for-television slasher horror film directed by Jake West and written by West and Barbara Werner. It's the third film in the Pumpkinhead franchise, and in it, residents of a small backwoods community summon the murderous demon of vengeance himself for revenge against a local mortician who wronged their deceased loved ones, while a town physician seeks to kill those involved in his summoning. This film goes back to the basic mythology of how one summons Pumpkinhead and the price you pay for doing so. I can't believe that old witch is still alive, but anyway, at least this film gets back to basics. However, the southern accents in this film were atrocious and more like caricatures than performances, and the plot is a bit too over the top. The town doctor, who looks like some evil southern gentleman from another time who goes around murdering people and harvesting their organs and then dumping the bodies in the swamp and never getting caught, it was all this grandiose performance. He doesn't hide it, he doesn't work alone, he makes a big production of his crimes, and he's killed dozens and dozens of people, but no one in this tiny town noticed? Maybe what I'm saying sounds reasonable, but trust me, watching it, it's quite outlandish, but I did like them bringing back Lance Henriksen at least. Number 136, Pumpkinhead 4, Blood Feud, a 2007 American made-for-television slasher horror film directed and written by Michael Hurst. It's the 4th installment in the Pumpkinhead franchise, and in it, when true love between two lovers are threatened by their family's violent feud, their only chance at peace leads them to summon the monstrous Pumpkinhead, who brings even bigger horrors. This film is at least more believable than the previous film, but come on, Hatfields and McCoys hating and feuding so someone summons Pumpkinhead? That's bottom of the barrel script work. That's the oldest, most used feuding family outside of Capulets and Montagues. These are names synonymous with feuding, so it's very unimaginative. Charmed even did something similar with 2 feuding magical families, but they at least gave a subtle nod that it was inspired by Shakespeare by naming the families Montanas and Callaways, keeping the initials but changing the actual name. So while yes, the story was overused and unimaginative, it did still work and made the story make sense, and it established that Pumpkinhead is almost always active because people are always seeking vengeance. And again, this brings back Lance Henriksen and that witch. Seriously, how is she still alive? alive. Number 137, Piewackett, a 2017 Canadian horror thriller film written and directed by Adam McDonald. In it, a frustrated, angst-ridden teenage girl awakens something in the woods when she naively performs an occult ritual to evoke a witch to kill her mother. This was a very atmospheric little horror film that moves slow but deliberate. This film isn't about some teenager summoning a demon and shit hitting the fan. That's too easy. That's surface level to draw you in. This really isn't about a demon at all. It's about the belief that created it, the power in belief and ideas. Look at people who commit crimes and say, God willed me to do it. Did he, or did you believe it so much it became reality? What this film is about is a sad girl who in a moment of grief and pain willed something to happen and now she feels guilty. Does the demon exist? Well, we see moments that would indicate it does, but those are minimal because that's not the point, I don't think. I think the point is about what the demon represents, our own dark impulses and how we want to blame someone else instead of taking responsibility, and this entity makes you take responsibility. The character willed something into creation and then believed there was no way out. She believed no matter what she did, her mother would die, so it became a self-fulfilling prophecy, and at that, it's a fascinating film. Number 138, The Pyramid, a 2014 American found-footage supernatural horror film directed by Gregory Levasseur in his directorial debut and written by Daniel Mearsand and Nick Simon. The plot follows an archaeological team attempting to unlock the secrets of a lost pyramid only to find themselves hunted by an insidious creature. Is it a tad ridiculous with cliche found-footage tropes? I'm not even gonna try to deny it because hell yes. This film doesn't think outside the box about how it's crafted, but I still enjoyed it. I've grown up loving ancient mythology and studying it and reading about it, and ancient Greek and ancient Egyptian mythology are my absolute favorites. So for me, this may be absurd, but it's a film that is bringing my favorite subjects to life. A special pyramid and tomb buried deep in the sands of Egypt, unearthed by archaeologists, and then we basically learn the ancient gods were real and Anubis still lives, but he was so dangerous and lethal he was sealed away by Egyptians. I don't know how he and all those cats survived, but I don't even care. I'm all for bringing ancient Egypt to life any day of the week, so I was very entertained by that reveal. Number 139, Queen of Blood, aka Planet of Blood, is a 1966 color science fiction horror film written and directed by Curtis Harrington, based on the screenplay by the earlier Soviet feature film A Dream Come True. The year is 1990. An alien species makes contact with Earth through radio transmission, notifying of an imminent visit. An alien ship crash lands on Mars and a rescue team is sent from Earth. This was so incredibly 60s. It was awesome seeing a young Dennis Hopper and John Saxon. I wonder if this was the first film about space vampires or if there was one before it. It's slow paced and not much happens, and the character dies from a minor scratch, which is kind of funny, but I gotta love it because of how it perfectly represents its time. It screams 60s, even how they saw life in the 90s. It is still very 60s, and just watching it feels not just like another time, but a whole other world, and is utterly fascinating. Did I enjoy the story? No, but like I said, it was fascinating just watching it all play out. If someone asked me what were the 60s like when it comes to films, I'd show them this. Number 140, Queen of Space The Dark Ride, originally titled Pikovaya Dama Chyorny Obriad, a 2015 Russian horror thriller film written and directed by Sviatoslav Podgievsky. In it, 4 teenagers decide to call the Queen of Spades as a joke, but when one of them dies of a sudden heart attack, the group realizes they are against something inexplicable and deadly dangerous. The film doesn't contain anything new or original. In fact, everything in it is something I've seen a dozen or more times. Perhaps the only thing I've not seen is using a canary to alert you to the presence of another entity, much like how they use canaries in mines. That was clever. But despite an overall recycled and predictable story, watching it in Russian somehow made it feel fresh, and I can't say any of it was done poorly. The performances were good, it was well made, the pacing was good. If anything, my only legit con is that there were maybe 1 or 2 scenes that can be considered scenes designed to scare people, and even those weren't scary. Aside from those, it's a very casual watch with very little to give one goosebumps. I had intended to watch the 2019 sequel, but I was unable to find a copy in the original Russian. Every copy I found was English dubbed, and that just ain't happening. Number 141, Quicksilver Highway, a 1997 TV comedy horror film written and directed by Mick Garris, based on Clive Barker's short story The Body Politic and Stephen King's 1992 short story Chattery Teeth. In it, traveling showman Aaron Quicksilver tells horror tales. A psychotic hitchhiker falls prey to a relentless, dangerously sharp set of chattering teeth and a human hand that comes alive. I actually really enjoyed this. It felt like an episode of Are You Afraid of the Dark or some type of anthology film. I loved Christopher Lloyd as this disturbing, eccentric storyteller. It's not scary, but there's a fun, whimsical appeal to this horror story that feels like sharing campfire stories or nighttime sleepover stories. What can I say? I got a kick out of this. Number 142, The Quiet Family, also known as Joyangang Gajuk, a 1998 Southern Korean black comedy horror film written and directed by Kim Ji-woon. The story centers on a family who owns a hunting lodge in a remote area whose customers always happen to end up dying. This is everything the genre description claims. It's hilarious but not in a bust-a-gut way. It's a murderous comedy of errors type of film. Some of the murders are intentional, but mostly everything just occurs because of bad luck, accidents or dumb misunderstandings, and then it all spirals out of hand. It's pretty entertaining to watch it all play out and quite amusing too, even though people are being murdered or just dying. Number 143, Razorback, a 1984 Australian natural horror directed by Russell Mulcahy in his directorial debut and written by Everett D. Roach, based on the 1981 novel of the same name by Peter Brennan. The film revolves around the attacks of a gigantic wild boar terrorizing the Australian outback, killing and devouring people. I am officially banning people from recommending movies to me. Pretty much every time someone recommends a film to me telling me I'll love it, I end up hating it, so clearly you guys just don't understand my taste of films. I hated it Boar, but everyone told me to watch this because it's so much better. It's not that much better. There's just less vulgar language. The animal looks more believable, and the film says it's set in the outback and it actually is, whereas Boar says it's set in the outback and it's the fucking bush, which is not the same thing. The performances in this aren't that great. It's still painfully stereotypically Australian, only this time it's Australia in the 80s, which sadly there were many elements that were pretty accurate. I feel the opening scene may have been an over-the-top, over-dramatization version of the Lindy Chamberlain story. I mean, it's a grandpa claiming a feral animal ate his grandson in the outback and everyone is calling him a murderer. Well, Lindy Chamberlain claimed a dingo ate her baby in the outback and everybody called her a murderer and sent her to jail when it turned out a dingo had in fact eaten her baby. That aside, yeah, the behaviour of this Razorback most of the time was just nuts. Did not enjoy this film at all, but for a directorial debut, I admit the director did a good job. Number 144, Ready or Not, a 2019 comedy horror film directed by Matt Bettinelli-Olpin and Tyler Gillette, and written by Guy Busick and R. Christopher Murphy. In it, a newlywed is hunted by her spouse's evil family as part of their wedding night ritual to Satan. A thoroughly entertaining and engaging piece, and incredible performances across the board about a rich white family, well, kind of acting like a rich white family. Grace is a strong-willed character and her perseverance is endearing. I love that she doesn't start strong, but she gets progressively stronger and more determined to survive as the film goes along, and then she gets to the point she's been through so much crap nothing phases her anymore, and all she can do is laugh. I love that at the end there's that brief moment where everyone thinks it's all BS and they've been killing loved ones for no reason other than their own sick amusement and pass the blame on some supernatural entity, but then it turns out it's real and we just get a brief glimpse of LaBelle, who clearly respects Grace and her resilience. On top of that, it's funny, the dialogue is witty and intelligent, and there were some rather funny moments. Overall, it's a great film. I just had a love-hate relationship with the ending is all. On one hand, it felt right, but on the other, it didn't. Number 145, Reanimator, also known as H.P. Lovecraft's Reanimator, a 1985 American horror comedy film loosely based on the 1922 H.P. Lovecraft serial novelette Herbert West Reanimator, directed by Stuart Gordon with a screenplay by Dennis Paoli, William J. Norris, and Gordon. In it, after an odd new medical student arrives on campus, a dedicated local and his girlfriend become involved in bizarre experiments centering around reanimation of dead tissue. Hilariously ridiculous film. It starts off slow and easy before building up into full-blown nuts territory. The film feels very self-aware at all times, and that's never more clear than when we get to the scene that absolutely blew my mind, which was a reanimated corpse holding its own decapitated head to perform cunnilingus on the person said reanimated corpse is obsessed with. I thought I had seen it all, but then I saw this and realized how wrong I was. That scene killed me. Very entertaining zombie film. And I don't even like zombie films. Jeez. Number 146, Bride of Reanimator, a 1990 American horror comedy film written and directed by Brian Usna, with a screenplay by Woody Keith and Rick Fry. It's a sequel to the 1985 film and the second entry in the Reanimator film series. In it, Doctors Herbert West and Dan Kane discover the secret to creating human life and proceed to create a perfect woman from dead tissue. This one didn't thrill me as much as the first. This really takes the Frankenstein concept and Bride of Frankenstein concept and combines the two. So for the most part, it just didn't feel that creative or imaginative. It also lacked the humor of the first film and somehow felt less aware of itself, which added to the disappointment. Number 147, Beyond Reanimator, a 2003 Spanish-American horror film directed by Brian Usna with a screenplay by José Manuel Gómez from a story by Miguel Chiara Flores. It's the third and final installment in the Reanimator film series and a sequel to Bride of Reanimator. In it, after 13 years in prison, the mad scientist gets a new chance to experiment with the arrival of a young prison doctor who secretly hopes to learn to reanimate dead people. Good intentions turn to horror. This was a step up. I felt this one, unlike the previous film, actually moves the story forward, moves the science forward, and does something that feels very much its own, and it finally seems a bit more self-aware. And while it's not as humorous as the first, it seems to try to include just a touch more than in the second film. Aside from that, it's good that the film consistently kept bringing the same main character and had Jeffrey Combs reprise the role each time. Number 148, Redemption, a 2020 Australian crime thriller film written and directed by Yuta Mukherjee. I'm sure I've butchered that name. In quest of freedom, a young and petite girl, Zoya, runs away from her overprotective and domineering father and then has to overcome an insane family of abductors, liars, and rapists. What disappoints me the most is that there was real potential here. It began as almost a Berlin Syndrome meets Psycho, a victim who falls prey to a charismatic man because she's trying to get away from a controlling father, but in her haste to do so, she ends up falling into the hands of someone even worse. The villain is interesting because he pretends to be two different people, one soft and caring and one evil and violent, and also that the victim will lean on and trust the caring version, but they never take it all the way. They abandon this concept pretty fast. No violence is depicted on screen, and the victim gets accustomed to her new situation far too quickly and throws herself at her protector insanely fast. Then when she finds out she's been duped thanks to a character who is never on screen, which was frustrating, she slowly starts crafting a way to get her justice. But her justice is mild and short-lived, and all her planning is either subtle or entirely off screen. We go from an interesting start to an entirely empty, lifeless second. Then it has elements of the victor taking back her power in the third act, but again, it's all surface level. There's no one to invest in or care about or even hate, and the character development is practically non-existent. To make matters worse, the dialogue is horrendous, especially for our villain. His dialogue is the most overly dramatic nonsense that doesn't even sound like anything a real person would say unless they were scripted to say it. Just so upset because there were elements there that could have and should have been built on. Number 149, The Ruins, a 2008 supernatural horror film directed by Carter Smith with a screenplay by Scott B. Smith based on the 2006 novel of the same name by Scott Smith. In it, a leisurely Mexican holiday takes a turn for the worse when a group of friends and a fellow tourist embark on a remote archaeological dig in the jungle where something evil lives among the ruins. Though I find the title to be quite misleading, I like the idea. The only flaw with the idea is that the monster of the story has no story. It just exists, and considering it's very uniquely written and capable of doing many bizarre things, some history or origin was really needed to make the story more interesting. Otherwise, it's just really one thing going on for an hour and a half and nothing ever really changing. People die, but when you see the situation, you already know it's inevitable, so it's hardly shocking. And number 150, The Sacrament, a 2013 American found footage horror thriller film directed by Ty West and written by Ty West and Eli Roth. Based on the real-life events of the Jonestown Massacre of 1978, it sees a news team trail a man as he travels into the world of Eden Parish to find his missing sister, where it becomes apparent that this paradise may not be as it seems. It's very obvious that this film is inspired by the Jonestown Massacre, and I can't believe I've ended up with two films inspired by the subject on this list just on accident. Starting off, I liked it, but as it started to move along, I wasn't enjoying some of the performances, and then it takes a drastic shift out of nowhere. It doesn't feel like it's been leading to it. It just feels like it needed to try and replicate the shock of the original massacre. But what really pissed me off was the found footage. For the first half, I was totally okay with it because because these characters are filming a documentary, so that all makes sense. But then by the second half, these characters are running for their lives, hiding in the jungle, trying to escape, trying to do all these things, and this guy will not drop his camera. He continues to run around and hide with this large conspicuous camera weighing him down. It made no sense for it to be there. And then there are moments where it's clear we're not looking through the lens of his camera, so then I'm just very confused. Anyway, that's another recap done, and my throat really hurts, so I'm gonna call it a day. So, as always with all my other recaps, please comment down below and tell me if you have seen any of the films mentioned that I have watched and talked about today, and tell me what you thought of those films. And then tell me if there's any films that I talked about that you haven't seen but piqued your interest, and let me know which ones those were. Anyway, I would very much like to stop talking now because it really hurts. So, I hope everybody is doing well. Please continue to take care of yourselves, you know. Times are still hard and we still need to be upbeat if we can. It's not easy, and if you can't, that's okay. Nobody can make you. Thank you as always to my amazing patrons for all the support that you give me, especially the financial support. It really means a lot in these hard times. That's the sign that I need to stop. So y'all do well, and I will catch you in the next one. Bye!